No success in the world can compensate for failure in the home. That's why Club Wealth was founded, to help driven, successful, and busy real estate agents like you double their business while building a strong, balanced home life. Join us each week as high-producing agents and team leaders share their stories and unpack the principles and systems they've used to double, triple, and even quadruple their business while enjoying greater quality of life. And now, here's the latest episode of Club Wealth TV.
Okay, we are all but live. I think we're pretty close to live. So we always kind of get started a little ahead of things because the pause between Zoom and Facebook sometimes doesn't tell us that we're live when we actually are. But I'm Michael Hellickson. I'm one of the coaches here at Club Wealth Coaching and Consulting. Super excited to have with me today not only my co-hostess with the mostest, Cherie Benjamin, who you all know, as well as Coach Brian Curtis, but we've also got special guests, Coach David Stites from Menifee, California, and Coach Nick Shivers from Mars. Not exactly sure where Nick's from, but we're pretty sure it's somewhere close to the Twilight Zone.
Welcome back to planet Earth, Nick.
Oh my gosh.
Currently, I am not on Earth. So, yes, I am an alien, and I'm proud of it.
Dude, we're all teasing. We're like, dude, what are you? He's like, yeah, I'm in Costa Rica. And Cherie's looking at his background. She's like, but the bird isn't flying. It's just stuck there. Like,
I put this background and I don't know how to take it off. It's been there for like a year. So, yeah. No matter if I'm in Alaska or currently like I am in Costa Rica, it's always the same.
Oh my gosh. I just get nervous when people start telling you to fly the bird. It's just weird. So that said, we're talking today about iBuyers, and we're talking specifically about, are these iBuyers out there? Are they a threat or are they an opportunity? And so here's what's going to happen. We got some really smart people on this call. We got a lot of really smart people watching the call as well. Guys, just talk about it. Tell us what your thoughts are, and let's just dive right in. So whoever wants to start, just go for it.
Well, I think they're both. They are a threat. They are going to take market share, and they're going to take a lot. If you look at where they all started in the Phoenix market, I think close to about 10% of market share. I don't know about you, Michael, but I know you were selling 300 homes a month. But did you ever get to 10% market share?
It wasn't 300. It was actually between 120 and 180 a month. But yeah, actually in one particular county, I did get, I think I got to 12%. But that was in a smaller part of the, it was not King County. It was in Pierce County. And it was a 12% market share on listings. So, but the reality is, and in fact, it's funny because I was just having that conversation with somebody this morning. There are a few agents out there, particularly in smaller markets, that I've seen that have between 12 and 15% market shares. But honestly, I can count on two hands the number of agents anywhere in the country that I'm aware of that have that kind of market share.
Right. So looking at that number, if they have 10%, that's big. So if you're not a little bit concerned about that, I think you're just stupid.
Yeah, I would agree. What do you guys think?
So are you saying that the iBuyer market they have 10% of the entire market right now?
Yeah. Yeah, in Phoenix, Arizona, they have between Open Door, OfferPad, I think Knock, they have, and Zillow Instant Offers, they have 10% market share. That's a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is a huge number. So we ran our numbers just to kind of see where we were at with our team in Menifee. Population's 100,000. We'll do, about 300 transactions this year, and we're at 2.9%. So if someone came out here and took 10%, yeah, absolutely. There's no question it's a threat. The cool thing is the reason we're doing the call today is, a lot of these really smart agents like Nick have figured out how to leverage these programs to make more money for ourselves. So Nick, talk to us about that.
Sure. I think when there's change, there's always opportunity if you look hard enough. And I'm down with Eric Wu probably 5 years ago, and he basically told me that he didn't need to make any money for a decade. And his platform and he basically told me what he was going to do, and he's done exactly what he was going to do. So I looked at that and said, I probably should bring that concept to the market prior to them. And so about 3 years ago, I started my own iBuyer program. And here's the reality. People like choices, and convenience is worth a lot of money. So if I see a lot of agents out there bashing the iBuyers, they're ripping off people. They're not giving them full value. Well, that's not necessarily what everyone wants. So why not give the consumer the option to take with choices, whether it's maximum convenience, like I always say, or maximum value. It's the consumer's choice, not the agent, because this is what we've done for 80 years, and this is the only way to do it. So, like I said, when there's a disruptor, if I'm an agent, I'm going, hey, I'm going to do my own, and I'm going to use the millions and billions of dollars that they're spending on advertising to make people start calling me instead of the local trusted agent, than the big Wall Street hedge fund group that's coming in, taking your money.
Well, what's really interesting to me is this isn't something that's really new, right? This is something that we've all been doing for a very long time. Nick, you and I both have run guaranteed sale programs for decades, literally more than 2 decades. And so this has been around for a long time, where people have, where agents, and it's been limited to a handful of agents, but there have been agents that have been offering the opportunity for an iBuyer, for people to have the agent buy the house if they don't sell it in a certain period of time. So that part is definitely not new. That being said, these guys have taken it to a whole new level, and they've put some serious dollars behind marketing it. And I agree with you. I think we got to take advantage of that, because if we choose not to take advantage of that, they're going to run us over. They're going to take a big chunk of market share, and they're going to take a certain amount anyway. But we can get a piece of that market share. And because it's becoming more mainstream, I think the opportunity that exists is, look, this is another arrow that I can add to my quiver that can help me bring in business in ways that I wasn't getting business before.
Yeah, and let's talk about the difference between guaranteed sold, which is what you were talking about, Michael, and what iBuyers are doing. I appreciate the analogy, but I don't even think they're. I don't agree with you, I guess. So when we did guaranteed sold, and I can't speak for your numbers, but I can speak to my own numbers. Realistically, you're buying houses for what, 65, 70 cents on the dollar? Was that a fair assessment?
It depends, but yes, essentially.
So iBuyers are buying them, I've heard, as high as 90 cents on the dollar.
Yeah. Razor thin margins
there. It's really apples and oranges, because if I go back and you're going to offer me 70 cents on the dollar, I go, well, I really, I can't even afford that. I can't even do that. Or if I can, I'm desperate. Whereas I think the person who took you up on that, say, and I don't know if you were even taken up on it, but the people who are actually doing the guaranteed sale, and the sellers who were doing it, they were desperate. They just need to get out of their house, or I don't know, foolish. I don't know, something, because you sell a house 30% below market value. I'd like to think that we could have sold it in a week for 15% below market value. But
so that's it. But here's the thing. Don't move past that yet. Let's talk to that for a second, because is the seller really foolish? Is the seller making a mistake to sell their home at a discount? And is it really apples to oranges? I want to hear what Nick thinks about that, because I know darn good and well Nick has made millions of dollars doing this. So Nick, what are your thoughts on whether or not they're foolish for selling at a discount?
Well, again, it's not my place to say if they're foolish or not. There has been many times, and David and Brian are completely right. iBuyers, Wall Street, especially when they first come into a market, we treat the iBuyers in our market as basically just other buyers, and don't think that their initial offer can't be negotiated. We just did a deal with Open Door where we actually got $32,000 factoring in repairs higher than their initial offers. So the fact is, we treat iBuyers in our market, okay, we lay it all out. We have Open Door, we have Zillow Instant Offers, we have my Rocket listing program, and we have, here's a traditional offer. So we lay it all out, and we let the consumer choose whether they like, hey, I want this closing today, and they take maybe my Rocket listing that is 85 cents on the dollar, or they go, you know what, I have 7 to 14 days. I'm going to take the open door offer at 90 cents on the dollar. Or you know what, Nick, what I'd like to do is I'd like you to list it for 60 days. And then would you buy it at the 85 cents after? It's all about choices for our consumer and giving and educating them. Let us, and we are the experts on all iBuyers, including our own, and the market. Here's another example of how iBuyers can get you in trouble. We had a client that Open Door had offered them a significant amount of money. It looked like it was over retail, but the zoning had just changed, and they were actually selling it for about $150,000 less.
Okay, so let's talk about the point that Brian made, okay? So we have one, and I don't think that, can I share my screen on here? Because
Sure.
I mean, I have an actual one that we can look at.
Absolutely. Well, is it giving you the share screen option, or do I need to add that to you here?
Got it.
You do have it? There you go. Perfect.
Which screen are you seeing?
We're seeing the offer details screen.
Excellent. Okay, so let's look at this, right? The way that I looked at it is, let's just face it head on. So they're here. This is in Atlanta. They're here. Not going anywhere. So let's go ahead on and see what this ends up being. So we've got, the offer was $370. Guess what we listed it at? $370. That's what they gave us their offer price. They've got this service credit, which is 7%. What is their service credit? But it's considered a fee. It's just a fee. Then we've got this seller's concessions of $18,810 with, if I scroll above, you can see the list of everything that they considered that was going to need to have a seller's concession that was on there. Now, this house was 5 years old. $18,810 plus a 7% service fee, which is what most people are thinking. They're thinking that, hey, and they had a 2-week closing on here. Well, this client, when we close this client's net, and I was looking in my dot loop to see if I can see their bottom line number, but I remember it was $24,000 higher that they got, and we still closed in less than 30 days on this particular property. But we had to put it in front of them. We couldn't just say, oh, you're going to make more money by going with us. And because what they're thinking is that I don't want to do the time that's, sit there for the time on the market and how long is it going to take and all of that. Well, put it in black and white. So part of this, when you're dealing with iBuyers, is that you have to have the education behind it. So you need to go out and you need to understand, what does Open Door offer? What is Zillow offering? What do they offer, so that you know how to compare? Instead of going in and just downplaying them and, oh, you never want to do that. Well, they might. Like these people here, they thought about this might be an easier process. In all actuality, it ended up not being. And they made $24,000 at closing.
Right. And my point earlier was, so if I could go back, if I'm going to buy that house, if I'm the iBuyer, and again, this is not that this doesn't work, I'm going to offer those people $280. Because, I got to close twice. I've got marketing costs. I'm not going to go and spend, $370,000 to make $10,000. So, and I think this is the part that agents probably need to be scared of and probably need to understand. That offer is really only 3 to 4% less than I got by listing it on the market. It's $24,000. That's real money. But it's only 3 to 4% is what we're talking about. And that's where we've got to be careful. And I love what Nick said earlier, because this was my approach to it as well, is why don't you let me list your house for 60 days? And if after 60 days that doesn't work out, then we can switch plans. And again, it's going to be person to person. So what you have to do when you're on those appointments is be flexible and be understanding. Here's the thing I love about what Cherie did. Instead of going, Open Door doesn't exist, Zillow doesn't exist, or we're not going to talk about that. Hey, let's just look at these options. And so it's also my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that you can, even if you go through Zillow or go through Open Door, you can still make a commission on it. So yes, it's not like if you don't, and here's what, if you don't address it on the front end, maybe Cherie's client goes, Well, Sheree didn't even tell me about that. I'm going direct to Zillow and cutting her right out. So information and upfrontness and clarity, I think, is really one of the most important things to piggyback your points.
Well, and let me jump in here for a second, piggybacking on what you just said, Brian, and what Sheree said. You know, who do you want telling the story? Who do you want telling the iBuyer story? Do you want the seller, you know, telling that story to themselves from their website after you leave? Or do you want to come with that information? And that's exactly why we pull, you know, an open door offer before our listing appointment and bring that offer to the appointment with us. So we could show them, hey, this is what Open Door is going to offer you. And then at that point, we've got the commission built in if they decide they do want to go that route. So that's one of the ways that we use them for leverage. And then, Brian, going back to your point, you know, that is the scary part. And I think that's why agents are nervous about this whole iBuyer situation. And Nick brought it up as well. When they first come into a market, I've seen them buy homes where there's no way they're making money. You know, there's no way whatsoever. In fact, I think they're going to lose $5,000-$10,000 at the end of the day. They've got so much money behind them, they don't care. And I mean, good on those investors. If I'm investing in a company and the owner of the company is telling me, hey, I don't want to make money for 10 years, or I'm okay losing money for 10 years. I mean, that's some strong belief right there that company is going to make it someday. But I mean, we can't run our businesses that way. You know, I can't lose money for 10 years. I can't break even for 10 years. So, I mean, this is why we're adapting to this and going to overcome it.
Yeah, you're right about that. It cracks me up that these companies out there can operate at a deficit for literally a decade before they have to be profitable. Because again, for you and I, that's not an option. That ain't happening. So, but Nick, you had that conversation. Is it Leo? Is that his name? I can't remember the guy's name. What's his name? You're muted, by the way. You got to unmute. I muted you out because there was some background noise on your side. Here, I'll unmute.
Eric Wu. That was Eric Wu.
Eric Wu. That's right. Yeah. And literally, he's like, you know, I can operate at a deficit. I don't have to make money for a decade. And really, the goal there is he wants to change the way real estate is transacted, right?
Yep.
So talk to us about that. What is that goal? What does that look like?
Well, it's a concept. It's, you know, the fact is us agents and NARs allowed Zillow to have consumer top of mind awareness when they want to get a value on their home. That's why I personally believe that Zillow will win the iBuyer war over Open Door, because they don't have to spend the money on marketing like Open Door does. Mm-hmm. Everybody goes and gets this estimate. Guess what? Now with this estimate, I also get an instant offer. So Zillow, in my opinion, will win that war. You can create systems and technology to show houses, but to get consumer top of mind awareness, it's there. And where is it? Zillow. And I don't know if that's going to change. So the reality is, it was interesting, Michael, because when I was in Inman and you were in Inman, I was talking to a guy that is connected with SoftBank, which is basically Open Door's major backer. And he basically filled me in on the philosophy of SoftBank is they're going to lose on 99% of their deals, and they're going to hit it big on one. So obviously they're banking on Open Door being that one. So they're willing to lose millions and millions, which they are, because the fact is, I've seen Open Door when they first came into my market, and they overpaid on one property that we sold them for a client by about $40,000. The property was worth on the open market $385,000. And before we took it live, because that's what we suggested to the person that was selling it, the list price of $385,000, Open Door offered $420,000 for it. Now that property is still on the market about 5 months later, and I think they're still listed at like $419,000.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, and so the reality is, I guess we've got to ask ourselves, how much impact is this going to have on each of us and our businesses? How big a deal is this going to be for the average real estate agent out there? Is it going to flatline their business? Is it going to put them out of business? Is it going to be something that if you embrace it and you understand how to work with it, and you go get that Open Door offer, or you go get that, you know, what that offer from whatever iBuyer you're out there comparing against, is that the solution? I want to put this in perspective for the average agent out there. And while you guys are formulating your answers for that, what I'd like to ask everybody who's watching right now to do, I'd like you to type in your screen, have you seen iBuyers in your market yet? Are you guys seeing this? And if so, how competitive are they in your market? Just type that in your screen. I'm curious as to how many of you are encountering them. But go ahead, guys. What do you think about that for the average agent?
I think the average agent gets stuck, and I know I did initially as well, thinking what's most important to the client is always money. And what the iBuyer has really shown us, and I think that's why it's blown so many of these agents' minds, is money is not always the most important factor. But as the agent, we get stuck on it. We get stuck thinking they want to make the most money. That's all they care about is price and commission. And really what iBuyer has opened all of our eyes to is we need to listen and we need to find out what is truly important to this client going into that appointment. Before you get to that appointment, I mean, my questions, my pre-listing questions have changed dramatically with iBuyer coming out, because I admit it. In the past, I thought price and commission were always going to be the number one factor in their decision, and it's not. So for me, that's what we've changed the most.
Michael, the reason I started mine was because I wanted the sellers to raise their hands to me. I never thought they would take my offers. In fact, there was several times where I would specifically, my agent would go out there, they would say, Nick, they want to do the instant offer. And I would go out there and say, why are you doing this? You're leaving $20,000 on the table. And they're like, yeah, I just want to be done with it. So we got to understand that. The second thing that I think as agents have to do is, because I will tell you, the iBuyers, once you're in their system, they are staying in contact with you weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, with a new market update, a new offer. So as agents, if we don't stay in front of our clients will no longer be our clients, because they are really, really good at that aspect of follow-up. And we all know the gold is in the follow-up, and agents traditionally are not very good at that.
That's putting it nicely. Agents suck at follow-up. I mean, as a rule, right? I mean, the reality is most agents just freaking suck at it. Let's call it what it is. And by the way, it's really interesting to me. I'm looking in the comments here, and a lot of people have commented that no, they don't have iBuyers in their market yet. And before we go down that question, I want to ask you, or I want to put a shout out there to our sponsor, WiseHire. And by the way, for those of you that aren't familiar with WiseHire, go check out clubwealth.com/WiseHire. That's Wise with a Z. Clubwealth.com/WiseHire. Those guys make this show possible. I'm actually putting it in the chat right now. WiseHire. There we go. And what they do for us is they do a lot of recruiting for us, whether it's for administrative positions or sales positions. They do a great job of helping us find and recruit great talent. So very happy with WiseHire. That being said, let's come back to are iBuyers in every market out there right now? And the short answer is there's probably an iBuyer in your market, whether you realize it or not. Somebody's out in your market buying these things. But the reality is it may or may not be one of the big ones. So the question I have for you panelists, are the big ones going to be in every market? Are they going to stick with just the big markets? What does this look like 2, 4, 5, 10 years from now?
So you can't know what's going to happen 2, 5, 10 years from now, right? And
what's your guess? Give us your best
crystal ball.
Come on, Curtis, you've got a crystal ball for the day. What's your best guess? Rub the genie.
My crystal ball is I should be sitting back drinking a Mai Tai on somebody's beach.
Yeah, seriously, if I know this, I'm going to hang up this call and appreciate all the money I just made. Anyway, I feel like they're going to continue. And that's my opinion, that they will continue to move forward. I think they're going to grow and change. But, Nick mentioned this earlier. Their plan was to lose money for 10 years. Can you fathom that? That means that they are not interested in making money short term. They're interested in market share. It's kind of like Zillow. I don't know. I haven't seen the actual statistics, but I've heard different versions of it, that Zillow doesn't make any money. They are a company that's literally worth billions that doesn't make any money, which, again, there's somebody much smarter than me that understands why and how that all works. But, our project, will they be in every market? They're going to be in the markets that make the most sense. I can tell you there's not a single iBuyer in the market where my team is. There's not a single one there. Whereas you go to Denver, you go to Seattle, you go to, Southern California, and they're everywhere. So, if I was in a market like I am without one, I'm going to start learning about it, because to Michael's point, they probably will eventually show up. So I've got a huge advantage over, say, David, who woke up 6 months ago and went, oh crap, there's iBuyers in my market. But who's an iBuyer in my market right now? Me. I mean, I've got that set up, and just kind of like Nick, and full disclosure is I stole my program from Nick. We masterminded and I stole it from him. And it's funny, my phone is literally ringing as we speak from one of my iBuyers that I ended up listing their house. And the reason they came to me, they said, you're the only person who offered to buy my house in the market, because I run an ad on my website and it says, I'll buy your house, basically. And we go through all the bad parts about listing and the good parts about just selling it to us. But again, when I have that conversation with that person, their house is worth, $300,000, and I tell them I'll give them 200, it doesn't. So that's another thing I think maybe somebody should address. When you're being the iBuyer, the lower the price is, you get price compression that happens, because closing costs are somewhat static. And so you end up, if you can iBuy a $500,000 house, your margins can be a lot better than if you're iBuying a $150,000 house. So, this is something to consider as you're moving forward. If you're going to start buying some of these, all those costs, but, when you make $100,000, you can absorb a lot of costs. When you make $20,000, you can't absorb very many costs. So I'll shut up now. Someone else's turn.
Michael, I'll answer the crystal ball question. So I do believe they'll be in just about every market. I mean, so Zillow is a Googled term more than realtor or real estate agent. I had the benefit of being interviewed by Zillow to be part of the iBuyer program. There was about 6 or 7 teams out in my area in Southern California that were interviewed. I was not picked, which rubbed me wrong for a little while. And I think that's really the true reason why I got into the iBuying side. But looking back at it now and talking to the team leaders who are doing the instant offer campaigns, I almost kind of view it as a blessing.
That you didn't get picked.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The teams that ended up, the main team in my area that ended up getting picked had to hire a admin staff to handle running over 100 CMAs per day.
Wow.
Every single day they are running 100 plus CMAs. Crystal ball wise, I think that's a huge reason why they're going to be in every single market, because when someone thinks about selling their home, they go to Zillow. I mean, and like Nick said, we let it happen.
So how many of those, I'm curious, of those agents that are doing 100 CMAs a day? And when we were doing a lot of REO, I had 4 people on my team that's all they did all day long was BPU, right? So that was part of the process, but the volume was there to justify it. So it was fine. So what I'm curious about is, on the one hand, I'm with you, man. That's scary that they gotta do 100 of those CMAs a day. The question though is, what's the volume on the back end of that?
So the volume's not there yet, just because it's new. Will the volume be there in 1, 2, 3 years? Yeah, probably. But like doing anything else, when you're first starting out, no, the volume's not there. And I mean, they're getting paid 1%, by Zillow to sell these things. If it's actually what the client ends up wanting to do. If the client doesn't want to take that offer, it goes to the other teams that Zillow has selected, and then they go essentially on a listing appointment and then pay a 35% referral to Zillow if they do convert it. So no, it's not there yet, and it's causing a lot of disruption within their team because they're having to handle so much volume. Mm-hmm. I think eventually that's why this won't work out, what they're doing on such a large, huge scale. I mean, we all run big teams in this group. Scaling's not easy. Yeah. And when we're talking about scaling, huge markets, I mean, they're taking on the huge markets first. What's the client experience going to be? If someone does an iBuyer this year, are they going to do it again in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years when they go to sell? Or are they just going to go back to a traditional agent again?
And by the way, Nick, we're going to go to your comment next. And then after we go to Nick's comment, we've got some really interesting comments in the Facebook thread that I'm going to read and we're going to talk a little bit about because I'm actually really impressed with some of the suggestions and comments that you guys have made. So Nick, go ahead, and then we're going to come to the.
Well, I think there's a couple points that we have to look at. So Zillow, they might not be buying a lot, but guess what they're getting? They're getting a ton of seller leads. And guess what? Those seller leads turn into either marketing dollars from agents like myself, or the 35% referral fee from agents like myself. And the other thing that we're forgetting is the auxiliary businesses, the mortgage, the property management, the home warranty, the title company. HomeLight's starting their own title company. They're starting their own mortgage. So if they're getting little pieces of all the pie, then their margins don't have to be that good. So I believe it's going to work. They are going to take massive market share. Now, if we're smart and we keep hustling and we stay grinding, we're going to be all right. But you got to stay on your game. You got to have your coach. You got to be following up. You got to be having client parties. You got to be on your game. Otherwise, they're going to eat your lunch.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Sheree.
So you know what? This reminds me, all this iBuyer stuff that's come about. I think that it was a little different for me. I didn't really stress over it. I just dove into let me understand how each one of these processes work because I lived through it back in the mortgage days. So I don't know if you guys remember when the lending trees and all of them came around and everyone in lending started freaking out. And guess what?
All the mortgage brokers are going out of business. They're all
going out of business. Like we all went through it back then. And so what it took back then was understanding that system and what they were doing and how they were getting their business and all of that. And this was, think about it, that was back when like the whole internet lead and everything first started. And so I think that a lot of agents, I just don't want for agents to operate from that status of such a fear, status when it comes down to these iBuyers and more of an understanding. So dig deeper, understand how their offer process works. What Nick's saying is 100% correct, especially for some of them. I mean, we get some of them over and it is, you have to use this lender and you have to use this closing attorney and you have to, and we need to keep them here. Why? Because they're collecting on each end. So are they okay with making, and I'm sorry, my Facebook is acting up, so I can't see the questions, but are they okay with taking a loss when it comes down to the house on the house side? Yeah, okay. Just as what you said, Nick, because it's all the other businesses that's not what's happening.
So, it's funny. When we were doing REO, I looked at REO because everybody freaked out. Oh, the commissions are so much lower in REO and there's so much more work involved. You got to have all this staff and then they try and screw you on the reimbursements. And then, it's just and, right? It was all this, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't do REO. And I look at what's going on with these iBuyers, and guys, it's REO. That's all it is. It's REO all over again. All we're doing is we're dealing with institutional sellers now, right? They're going to come in, they're going to buy these things up, they're going to have to sell them. We're now dealing with institutional sellers, which is great, right? I like institutional sellers because they're unemotional, right? It's a very straightforward transaction. All I got to do is run my business right. That being said, what it forces us to do is get better as agents. It forces us to get more efficient. It forces us to be more creative. It forces us to think harder about our business. And guess what? When the REO boom came around, it weeded out a bunch of crappy agents. Thank you. Thank goodness for getting rid of those crappy agents so that now the ones that were creative, the ones that worked hard, the ones that were willing to run their business efficiently, they not only survive, but they thrive. Best 3 years of my business were 2007, 8, 9, and 10. Those were the 3 best years of my business, was the gut of the REO market. And only half my business was REO. What it did was it gave me all kinds of market share. It gave me the ability to hire more people to offer higher levels of service. It gave me the opportunity to open up mortgage. It gave me the opportunity to do all this other stuff that brought in dollars that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have that market share. Oh, and by the way, now I got to have all those relationships with those clients that now if I take really great care of them, I've got a ton of referral sources out there. So it's very positive.
Let me play Brian Curtis for a second.
Okay, tell me how I'm wrong.
No, it's not how you're wrong, but it's the other side. So if you want to look at it in real, here's the one thing. My buddy Steve said, when it comes down to iBuyers, you either adapt or you die. bottom line to it, and that's like with everything else, right? But when you look at it in reference to REOs, yes, great for you, Michael. It brought all of this business and all that other stuff, but it also brought down home values because it flooded the market. So when we talk about, let's talk about this crystal ball of these properties that are sitting there for the next years, and now they have to discount those properties from what they bought them from in order to sell them out. So when you look at it and you compare it to an REO, you start thinking about that. Like, okay, well, wait a minute. So in REOs, the banks took these properties back, and now they started cutting down the prices, and my neighbor or my home is now not worth what it used to be because REO, short sales, all of that boom.
And there's no question that big shifts in the market have an impact on values. There's no question that's an issue. The question isn't whether or not, because we can't fix that, right? We can't change that. We have no impact on that. So we have to control the controllables. So we got to ask ourselves, what do I have control over? What I have control over is whether or not I embrace iBuyers. What I have control over is how I deal with the changes in the market to determine what I'm going to get to have as opportunities going forward. So I can, to your point, I can either ride the wave or I can get crushed by the wave. But I can tell you this, I'd much rather ride it, take advantage of it. I mean, I'll give you an example. If Zillow came to me and said, Michael, we want you to be our rep in your markets that you serve, would I do it? Absolutely, I would do it. You bet I'd do it because it gives me more volume. Do I like it? Do I like where this is all headed? No, I'm not in love with it. But at the end of the day, I can't change the global picture. I can only change what I do for my business. And so
the thing about the admin that's cranking out a bunch of CMAs, that's no different than when you think about prior to the sexy name iBuyer coming around, when we had hedge funds, big investors that came in, and the only thing we did, or a person who's representing them did, was send out a bunch of offers back to back to back to back to back all day long, never sight unseen. It's the same.
That's right.
It's the same.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember we did a lot of that back in the day. Okay, we got to go to some of the questions in the Facebook feed. There's some good comments in here. Now, Chris Lind in Vegas, and Sheree, I think Chris, made a great comment. He said, in Vegas, we're seeing squatters kind of target open door homes, which makes sense because it's so easy to get in. They just need a phone. So they're literally seeing squatter issues there, which is right, which we had with REO. We saw a lot of that. And with short sales, we saw a lot of squatters, and that became a real issue. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. Any comments on that, guys, before we move to the next one?
Are they checking if the squatters have real estate licenses?
Right?
Oh, that did happen. Yeah.
I do remember that. Remember the guys, there were guys that literally were squatting on houses, and what they would do is then they would rent them out. So they would, and dude, it was crazy. They didn't even have ownership to the house, and they would rent it out, and they would screw people out of the deposit. It was it got really sad for a while there. Anthony mentions iBuyer sales will slowly erode home values in communities unless appraisal criteria per Dodd-Frank changes significantly. That may be possible. You never know.
I'm gonna, because Sheree played me, I'll play the version 2.0 with me. I think the biggest difference that we'll see with iBuyers versus REO is that the mentality, and I think, and Michael, you can talk to this, and probably Nick, and I don't know if you did REO back in like 10, 11, 12, Sheree, but one of the things that I saw in REO as it came to an end, and I know it's not over, but as the huge REO thing came to an end, is that they got good at it. And that was something that was very interesting to me. So in 2007, when I first started seeing REO in my market, I'd run ads, buy houses for pennies on the dollar, those type of things. We got tons of calls and it worked. But what's interesting is if you looked, say, 2011, 2012, 2013, those houses, they were REO, but they all sold at market value. And sometimes they sold above market value. Because what happened, and I used to tell buyers this, is that the asset managers became really good at their job. And I think that those same asset managers are probably working for the iBuyer companies. So, some of the things that's going to happen is they're going to know and understand those tricks. And, I always laughed at people, I'm going to buy an REO, I'm going to steal it. But honestly, near the end, if you bought an REO, you probably got screwed. So it's just an interesting thing, but everyone can say, I bought a foreclosure, therefore I'm a genius. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch is how well they manage the portfolios. And the other factor, since we're using our crystal balls, is what happens if a whole bunch of iBuyers come and then the economy tanks. So my guess is they'll hold these here or get rid of them and dump them. And then that's when the infusion of money comes in, because, hey, I can buy this stuff for 70 cents on the dollar now, and I can hold it for 5-6 years. And I've got, I was looking up as on this thing, I think Open Door has raised 1.3 billion in capital. Well, if the market were to crash tomorrow, 1.3 billion in capital is going to buy a couple houses. So just an interesting thing. And that's why I was kind of unwilling to answer what's going to happen in the next 5 years, because it really depends on what the market is for a big part of that.
And each level, I mean, it still goes back to each level. You just make you adapt to it. What's this next level? You adapt to it. The agents we see it a lot, and we, with us being in different groups and all of that and masterminding with people, we hear that some agents, they're stuck in the complaint mode, of this iBuyer being here. And the ones who are not, such as all of us that are on here now, we are understanding iBuyers are here. How do we adapt to this? And boom, let's get in front of it and let's go make some money. So that when the next wave comes, it's a new wave. This is what's here. Boom, let's get in front of it. Let's go make some money.
Sheree, to your point, Oscar mentions, he says, well, I think we just need to stop worrying about something that could or may not even happen, and just worry about what we can, just worry about what we can control and do what we need to do with it, and not worry about what the other guys think on doing, and just do that. Well, here's the bottom line, Oscar. I think we're kind of saying the same thing. To Sheree's point, you have no control over this. You have no control over what happens in the marketplace. But the people that survive, the people that thrive in real estate today, and that have for decades. I'm looking at the people on this call, and I'm thinking, like Nick, you and I have been doing. We back in the REO days, you and I were doing tons of business. Why are we still here today, right? When a lot of REO agents went out of business, why did we make it through that REO time when agents went out of business during that time? Well, the reason is because we learned to adapt, and that's what you have to do. You cannot get so stuck in your business model that you think, oh, it's business as usual. Look, I'm not trying to pick on the other coaching companies out there, but there are still companies teaching stuff from 20 years ago that to some degree still works. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but what I'm saying is if you only do that and you fail to adapt to the market and you fail to understand what's happening in the market, you're going to get left behind. And you're going to be working 10 times as hard as you need to for less and less and less money. And that downward pressure on commission is going to have a massive impact on you and your business. So how do you avoid that? Learn to adapt. Listen to people like the people on this call. Become, coach with Club Wealth. Be in our masterminds. Show up to our events. Network and mastermind with the smartest agents in the country, smartest agents on the planet, who are already adapting and who are already way ahead of what's going on, so that you can learn from what they've tried that didn't work and from what they are having success with. Thoughts? Everybody's like, yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
You stepped up on the soapbox.
That's
You
it.
just went
Change.
to church.
But I mean, it's frustrating to me to see people not succeed when I truly believe that. I'm tired of people saying real estate agents are going out of business. Oh, and I had a friend of mine, someone I respect, a good man, but he says to me yesterday, he's like, well, Michael, the real estate industry is changing, and you better start looking at other things because the real estate agents are going to be a thing of the past, and there's all this disruption, and it's going to change, and they're not going to be around anymore. Dude, come on. First of all, there's still taxi drivers out there despite Uber. There's still travel agents out there despite Travelocity. There's still mortgage brokers out there, but despite LendingTree and all these other companies. Here's the difference. It's the crappy ones that are going to have to find another job. It's the crappy ones that are going to have to learn to say, would you like fries with that? The rest of us that aren't crappy, the rest of us that are going to work our tails off and network and mastermind and coach with the right people, guess what? We're going to have greater success than ever before. There are travel agents out there making way more money now than they would have made a decade ago. Why? Because they adapted and they figured out what their core clientele and their core competencies are, and they focused on that. So that said,
to wrap it up, don't be crappy. That's basically our message. That's our message today. Let's be less crappy.
The quote of the day, let's be less crappy.
Don't be basic.
We got to get shirts. Club Wealth, be less crappy.
Don't be basic.
All right. So let's see.
I think that deserves one of the what are they at? Yeah, the banners. Yeah. I think it's time for me to have my own banner. So I think that's it.
So that's yours. So the new so Tara, if you're watching,
crappy.
the new David Stites banner is going to be Club Wealth, be less crappy, David Stites. I love it, dude. All right. Wendy makes a good point. She says, iBuyers don't make their money on the sales price. They make their money on the service fee. You're right about that. There's the, and it's framing, right? It's how are they framing what, because what the audience sees or what the consumer sees is, oh, they're making me an offer at, close to full price. But they don't see all these back end fees and the junk fees and all that.
Here's the facts. They don't make money. The facts are they
even
don't
with
make
the service fee
right now. Right. With any of it. They don't make money.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here. Okay, so we've got actually house market is expected to go higher as the economy of the country slows down in the next 18 months. So that's interesting. I'd love to know where Anna, where you heard that. I'd be very curious as to who's suggesting that the market's going to continue to grow even though the economy is expected to slow. That's interesting commentary. Okay, so guys, we've got 6 minutes left. So here's what I want to do. Rapid fire. We're going to go to each one of you. I just want to hear your final comments. And by the way, those of you that have been watching, thank you very, very much for being on. And don't forget, if you have not already done so, get signed up for the Business Strategy Mastermind Conference. Business Strategy Mastermind Conference this year is in Anaheim, California. Everybody you see on the call here today will be there. And let me tell you, it is awesome. It is. Nowhere else on the planet can you get that many of the top producers in the country all in one spot at one time. And regardless of your production level, you get to rub shoulders with these guys. And you're not in a room with 4,000 agents. You're in a room with 300 agents, and you're rubbing shoulders with them, and you get to know them, and you get to ask them direct questions and mastermind with them, and it's magical. And I'm telling you, if you do nothing else, if there's only one event you attend all year long, make sure you're at Business Strategy Mastermind Conference. Go to clubwealth.com/BSM. And you better get your tickets soon because a couple of things happen. One, ticket prices go up as we get closer to the event. We're already inside the 90-day mark. Two, the tickets sell out every year. And so get your ticket while you can because they will sell out. So let's start with, we'll go from Brian Curtis to Cherie Benjamin to David Stites to Nick Shivers. Everybody give us your final thoughts. Brian.
My final thoughts is everything changes all the time. And, I love what Nick has done. And again, I loved it so much I copied it. But what we got to do is just, I saw Tony Robbins say this one time, that you've got to dance with it instead of fight against it. And as agents, we have this tendency to go, how does this hurt me? This sucks. I don't want to be involved. We need to crush it. And you know what? I don't know about you guys, but I can't crush a company that has $1.3 billion in backing. So what I've got to figure out how to do is leverage what they're doing to help me out. And there's so many ways to do it. From creating your own program to using it as a guaranteed sales program to covering it up front. Number one thing I would say that my takeaway is don't be afraid of it. Face it head on and understand that the consumer is relatively ignorant of what's going on. So educate them. If you educate them, they're going to be the person that they want to work with you because you're the person who brought them value. You didn't come in there and bash on it. You just educated them, gave them the ability to make a choice. And, if you're right, you'll be the person who gets picked.
Yeah, number one is never go into an appointment and start bashing it. Don't ever do that. So if they are talking about it, that means that they've done some sort of research on it. So the best thing for you to do is go in there, for you to educate yourself first, understand that process, go in head on. And this is one of the most important times for agents to start listening. So sometimes it's not that I don't want to pay commission. Sometimes it's the time frame, so looking at it and understanding the iBuyers, understanding how you can incorporate that in your business, put that on your menu options when you're going into a listing appointment, that we're covering all of this so that every time you remember to go on it so that you're being more proactive, versus being reactive to it. So the biggest thing is for you to educate yourself. Don't be afraid of it. Don't live in the fear zone. Adapt to what's going on in our market right now. Like you do every single year, we're adapting to something else, market prices, all of that every year. That's what's here right now. Adapt to it and thrive.
Yeah, make sure you're the one telling the story. You always want to be the one telling your own story and other stories if possible. If you have iBuyers in your market, use it as leverage. If you have a listing that's not selling, we have sold several of our listings to Open Door and to Zillow because they weren't sitting and they got a terrific offer. So use it as leverage to get the listing, use it as leverage to sell some of your listings. But I love, Brian, I love what you said there. Dance with them instead of fighting them. I mean, no single one of us can take that company down. So let's dance instead of fight. I love it.
Love it. Nick?
Just breathe. Just breathe.
Just keep swimming.
Hey, change is inevitable. And look at the opportunities. There's always doors opening, but if your head is down because you're like, oh my gosh, you'll never see the opportunities that are in front of you. So just breathe, accept change, and look at opportunities and walk through the door. Pura vida. Pura vida.
I love it. And one of my favorite quotes is that where there's where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And right now in the marketplace, there's starting to become a lot of chaos. That's great news, right? Because for those that are studying it and that are understanding it and that are masterminding and learning about it, guess what? You guys are going to have the opportunity to capitalize on things that others won't, because they're going to be so busy feeling bad about what's going on. And, it's like back in the day of the water cooler, where everybody's standing there saying, well, gosh, buyers are liars and sellers are worse. No, they're not. It's you, dude. If you think it's everybody around you, it's probably freaking you. Get over it. Understand that there's a ton of freaking opportunity out right now. You got to go get it. Figure out what your mechanism is going to be. And to exactly the point that Brian Stree and David all made, dude, be positive. The worst thing you can do is come out and be negative about this stuff, you guys. Look, it's a good thing. They're challenging us to be better. Let's rise to the occasion. Let's rise to the challenge and actually be better. I love what they're doing to our industry because it's going to create a better agent long-term. So that being said, guys, great discussion. Cannot thank you all enough for being on. Really appreciate you. Don't forget to get signed up for Business Strategy Mastermind Conference. If you guys found value in this video, share it. Please tag somebody you know in it. Share the video, let them see it, and we will see you at Business Strategy Mastermind Conference. And I don't know what is going on with Nick, but it is freaking me out.
He needs to be less crappy with his video. That's
oh my gosh.
See you guys. I just came out of the abyss. See ya.
All right, guys. Have an awesome day. Take care, everybody.